Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is John. This is my channel, Your Renaissance Man. So, this is another topic of interest of mine that I've been dealing with more so in recent years and a little bit newer to me, and that's being an adult with ADHD. So this video is more of a vlog, kind of like talking about where I'm at with it, what I've done so far, what led up to all this, and just a little bit of a journey, bringing you into my journey, I guess. But before I get into all that, thank you to our subscribers. You guys are awesome. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're willing to do so, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you've subscribed already, if you continue to support us by either like, commenting, or sharing. Um, so I was diagnosed with ADHD a little over a year ago, about, and at that time it was more so just to put my finger on what exactly I was dealing with, and what led to that was my son was having some difficulties in college. Certain stuff would just trip him up and couldn't get through it. And he was never diagnosed with it either until as an adult. So for both of us, it was not something that was noticeable, and that's what we're starting to find out now, that, a lot of the people that are diagnosed as children are usually because, they have really strong symptoms, signs of it. And I mean, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, the medical system or whatever. You can't find everything immediately. So sometimes you got to be proactive and deal with it on your own. So me and my son were discussing about what he was dealing with. And, when he was talking about it, I'm like, to me, it kind of sounds like ADHD and what little I know about it. And so he had start, he started his own, adventure into this and journey, whatever you want to call it, to, explore this. And he was diagnosed with ADHD and he was put on meds. He doesn't, well, I don't need to get into his personal life, but anyways, don't need to get into his crap any deeper than that. But anyways, so after he's started doing all this, he comes back to me. He's like, "Dad, this is definitely who we are. This is definitely something that's in our lives, and we just didn't really know it because both of us are high functioning in that regard. I mean, he was pretty much a straight A student, so he didn't exhibit anything that was like noteworthy or of concern to anybody that was in his day to day life. Like, oh, he's struggling in school or can't do this, can't do that. So, it gets masked when you can't, or when when you're functioning, higher functioning, and that's kind of the way I was. Because then when I ended up going to get tested, the doctor guy, whatever his name was, doesn't matter his name, but he's like, so if you, why are you here then, even if you do have it? He says, if you're at, because at the time I think my age was probably around 52 or thereabouts, and he's like, obviously, if you do, you've got this far in life and you haven't, nobody else has ever thought to look for it, so why are you here? And I'm reading into that a little bit. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm getting by, whatever, but I always had some stuff that I struggled with, and some of it I learned to deal with on my own without knowing what I was dealing with. So does a test and all that stuff. And, he goes, you're pretty high functioning, you do register as it, but, he goes, do you want me to give you the diagnosis of that? And I go, well, I'm not really looking to get the diagnosis. If I fit the parameter, yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's what I'm there to learn. Here to know, to understand why I am the way I am and why I struggle with what I struggle. And so, so he had a valid point, you know, meaning you got by this far. Why does it matter now? It's like, well, because life has always been a struggle, and I'm, my ADHD, I can hyper focus on stuff and learn all sorts of crazy stuff, and I mean, it's something I'm proud of. I mean, there's definitely things that it's helped me with in my life. And I don't say this to brag, just to give you a little insight. Some people, with ADHD, hop hobbies a lot and become experts on their hobbies and then maybe lose interest and then jump to the next hobby. I did that with careers. I mean, I'm not talking about jobs, careers. I completely shifted directions. I don't know how many times. I honestly don't know. And it's not, and this wasn't like, I'm in my mid 50s now. So it's not like these were 6 months. I'm going to try this, 6 months. I'm going to pump gas. 6 months. I'm going to be a cook, 6 months. And then I'm going to, whatever, it wasn't done in that way. Like I went to school to be an aircraft mechanic, and the only reason I did that was I liked working with my hands and it sounded lucrative. So I was only thinking about it from, the pay potential. And when I got out, the Gulf War was going on, 91 or whatever it was. And that really reshaped the airlines industries. And I was interviewing with Delta Airlines at the time, and they were still hiring. The current situation hadn't impacted, their hiring yet. And I washed out. I made it. There was like 2 or 3 levels of interviews, and I made it through the last one, and then opened my mouth and said something I shouldn't have. Maybe that was, well, whatever. It's better off that I didn't move to Atlanta because I'd be moving back to where I am now. So, anyways, shortly after that, Delta Airlines laid off 600 and some people or whatever it was of the most recent hires. So, had I gone there, I'd have been going home anyways. So, anyways, so that line of work, it just, after it started falling apart, meaning the ways that I wanted to do it, work for large airlines, and the airlines started outsourcing stuff and not doing as much, I just like, I'm not going to do this. It's not the way I envisioned it, and it's not going to be lucrative, and it looks like the industry is reshaping. So from there, I went back to, I I got I got my foot in the door with a large company as doing maintenance and mechanical work for their part of their business, and ended up being a boiler operator. And then through that, we were also doing maintenance for for a manufacturing facility. So I learned how to do electrical work and welding, hydraulics, plumbing, just all this jack of all trade stuff. But where I'm going with all this is I've got probably 15, 16 skills that I could go make money at. I know it well enough to charge money for it. And it sounds fun and interesting. And I'm proud that I can do all these different things because it's made me very independent in my own life for things that I need to resolve or problems. I mean, I really don't have to hire an outside person to do anything in my life if I didn't want to. Sometimes now as you get older, it's like I really don't want to deal with that anymore. I don't want to rebuild a transmission. I don't want, that kind of stuff where it's just like it's arduous, it's heavy, I can afford it now, that kind of stuff. So where it hurts you in a career though is you're never going to advance too far if you're always dropping out completely and changing directions. And a lot of this stuff is self-taught, even though I get to the point where I'm good enough to, start a business around it. Like I said, proud of myself being able to do that. But if you don't stick with it long enough, you're never, once you get past the fun stage of building it, where, when you're getting all the dopamine, because it's this new adventure. And I mean, most of these things I shouldn't say most of them, at least half of them or more, I've turned into businesses when I became self-employed later in life. So it's starting a new business is fun. It's exhilarating and it requires a lot of effort. You get a lot of dopamine off of that, which I'm learning. That's why I was so interested in that stuff, become an expert on it. I'm like, I can start a business for this. I got enough knowledge on this. I can do that. And I could. But then when it levels out and it's not as fun and interesting, and the only thrill is customers, it loses traction with me, and like I said, this wasn't 6 month stuff or even a year. This is stuff I did for sometimes 6, 7 years, so I did stick with it. But like I said, it's really frustrating as an adult, because as you get, time isn't on your side. You're fighting the clock the day you're born. And I don't have a lot of security in my life because I never stuck with anything long enough. So, at some point, if you don't have a business that's established with employees, and it can operate maybe with you as a manager, minimal involvement, and turn money, you're kind of screwed if you're the one that's turning the labor and making the money, and then you lose interest. So that was a bad decision on mine, or a short sighted, or something I didn't know how to overcome. Um, because if I would have built a business to the point that I took on employees and kept growing it, and that's not to blame anybody, but it's to understand that my limitations were I knew how to pick up a skill and charge people, but I didn't know how to grow a business. And so that's where I'd plateau. And then I was scared of hiring people. Am I really prepared for that? And doing that solo, you know, with the ADHD stuff, you don't always have the greatest confidence unless the dopamine's hitting. When the dopamine hits, I'm Superman. I can multitask and do all sorts of crazy stuff. Really good under fire, really good under high stress situations. But when things are kind of level and boring, I'm not the person to get stuff done, you know. Definitely a procrastinator, that kind of stuff. And that can really hurt you in the world the way it's structured. So that's where I was struggling in life. And my son's mother, I was married to her I was with her for close to 20 years. And that masked a lot of that stuff because she was very good at staying on top of the boring stuff, paperwork, making sure the bills were paid, making sure our health insurance was, in line and renewed and all that stuff. So that helped me a lot in life because I didn't have to think about that stuff. She kept all that stuff going. And then later on in life, when we get divorced, I'm in my 40s and we got married really young. I got married at 18, somewhere in there, 19. So then to be on your own, as an adult for the first time, that was a struggle. That was really difficult. Um, what kept me going more than anything was I had joint custody of our son. And so I had accountability. That helps out a lot. That helps me out tremendously, is the accountability. What hurts me is, being single. I may have accountability to myself, but that doesn't rate high. I don't know if other ADHD people are that way also, but you don't worry as much about yourself, So when I have a son relying on me, it's like, man, I got to keep my crap together. I got a little kid, I got to keep a roof over my head. I got to keep the money flowing. I got to make sure this, I got to make sure that. That puts a lot of pressure on me, but that's what keeps me going. And that's what gets the dopamine going. So now he heads off to college, and that kind of fun stuff. And my life slows down and I'm involved with another business I'm starting. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to spread my wings and really get going. Now at this time I was doing landscaping and tree removal, which I still do some of that stuff. And I still like the tree removal stuff. Um, I'm like, okay, now we got to build a business up now to carry me to retirement. Cause I'm in my 50s now, or pushing 50. I don't know if it's 50 yet, but, I got to make sure I can live into my retirement, or maybe establish a business that I can make income off of, or, because this is all physical work. And at some point I'm going to slow down. So yeah, so I start that, investing myself more in the current business, and my mom passes away and my dad's health starts to slide, and I take him on. And he's still living with me. He's been with me for over 6 years. And that has been extremely challenging. That's more challenging than taking care of raising a child, in my opinion. And, knock on wood, I had a pretty easy kid, and I was pretty determined with my child and making him a good person. And so I was pretty strict with him, but I felt I was fair. And I think he would say the same thing. But I was worried about his future enough that I wanted to make sure he was a good person and he could get through life. So I didn't have a lot of problems with him because I was, a very devoted parent. So he's very well disciplined, and, There was one, for example, there was one time we were out and he witnessed somebody with their child, and the child was just acting out, and the parents weren't doing anything about it, type thing. And he's like, Dad, why do they let him do that? Why is he doing that? Just questioning the whole situation. Why is it allowed to keep playing out like that? I said to Howie, I says, how come you never did that with me? He says, because I knew not to mess around with you. I go, there it is. That's that's why that's why you get kids to listen to you. They know not to cross the line when mom and dad are around. Sometimes they hide it and do it with other people, but when your kids are used to having to show respect and respond to mom and dad, they're good people. They're good kids. And I mean, I never even had to discipline my kid. I mean, I'm not saying he's perfect, but I never had to discipline him. We kept things fair. We kept things friendly. We keep open communication. So I was very devoted to that, and I'm pretty proud of him also. So yeah, so going back to this before we spin out too far on tangents. Um, so now I take on my father, who's 90. Well, now he's 90. When he moved in, he was 84-ish, 83, somewhere in there. And with Alzheimer's dementia, newly diagnosed, and history of stroke and heart attack, and not perfect health, but he's still in decent health. I mean, physically mobile, all that kind of stuff. I don't have to feed him. He feeds himself and cooks for himself, and he helps cut the grass, and he stays busy. But, when you don't come from let's just say, a healthy family, meaning emotional type stuff, it's hard. It's really hard to live with your parents. They lived with me for a short time when they were building their house at retirement age, and couldn't wait for him to leave. I was happy to help him out for that short period of time. Couldn't wait for him to move out and get my life back. And I don't regret taking my father in because he's done a lot for me. But it's very challenging to live with a 90-year-old man going through Alzheimer's dementia and then having no outside help. And so that's what led me to learning more about the ADHD and stuff. Was recently I've been really struggling holding my crap together, keeping my business alive, keeping myself motivated to do work, keeping it's a lot of stress, which led to me, I had my self-management stuff that worked well for ADHD before I knew it was ADHD, and looking at how to take care of yourself with ADHD. It's all stuff that's beneficial that I kind of discovered on my own without knowing why I was doing it, why it worked for me. And I had my own routine of go to the gym every morning, and that gave me that, that endorphin kick being on the treadmill or, lifting weights or whatever. Every day I started at the gym, I felt better, and I need to get back to that. And I'm having a hard time getting back to that. And I can't, there's this paralysis you can get with ADHD. And I experienced that moment, and that became my crossroads or my awakening, where it's like, I got to do something about this. It's beyond my control now. I was having strings of days where I could not do anything, and if you've had this ADHD paralysis, you understand it. If you don't, and you don't understand it, it can be the most frustrating thing as another person watching you. And if they're not willing to understand, it can be, you get that minimalized. Why can't you just, that kind of that really destructive talk that's not good for a relationship, minimalizing, why can't you just get up and go to the gym? I don't know how to explain it to you. It was the most frustrating thing I ever experienced. And, I'm very good relationship with my son. So I've been talking to him about it. He's like, Dad, you really need to go to the doctor. And that's a hard thing to hear. It's a hard thing to hear from your son. It's also a hard thing to admit to yourself, you know, because as men, we pride ourselves on our, you know, our, relying on ourselves and being independent, strong, being able to overcome things without outside help. And so, as a male, it's kind of ingrained to us, at least in our culture, that, we're supposed to be stronger than everybody else and take care of everything. So sometimes you get to the point where you need help. The only way it's going to happen is if you initiate it, because nobody else is really going to dive in there and save you, type thing. Not that I expect somebody to save me. That's not the point of that. But just the way our culture has taught us, and that's, and that's probably why, I don't know if this word is voodoo on. I'm trying to avoid language that YouTube doesn't like to hear for monetization stuff, meaning they won't push your videos or hide you or shadow ban you stuff. So when a person doesn't, dealing with depression type stuff, and they do the ultimate thing where they no longer breathe, we'll say that. I think a lot of that, at least from the male side, comes from expectations of males of what we're ingrained to believe. And then that person feeling like they're not living up to the world or something like that, and can lead to that stuff. So, yeah, the mental health of our country is not what it used to be. And it's not acknowledged. Mental health stuff is kind of, I don't feel like it's recognized as well as it should be, and not given as much attention as it needs, not just for my own self, but just for now having more knowledge of what I see in the world and just seeing a lot of people struggle with mental health stuff. So yeah, so that led me to going to the doctor first time for help with ADHD in my life. Never at all have I asked for help or asked to inquire about what can the medical community, conventional medicine do for me, for what I'm struggling with. And of course it's meds, because that's what conventional medicine always pushes. I shouldn't say always. I don't hate the word always and never. It's anyways, I'm trying to avoid that. I hate saying anyways all the time too. anyways. So I go to the doctor, they put me on meds. And right away, huge difference, even on the lowest dose, huge difference. It, when you have ADHD paralysis, the way I explained it to my son was, I felt like the door was closed and I was not capable of opening it. It was locked. I didn't have the key, whatever analogy you want to use. I literally felt there was no way going through the door. And first time taking meds, it's like somebody opened the door and said, "Come on in." It was that dramatic. Whereas when I was managing on my own, I had my own regiment of taking care of it that was working for me when, back before my father moved in. Like, I'm not blaming that situation. That was my choice and I don't regret it. I'm glad he's here. I don't want him in a nursing home, but it puts a lot of stress on me, and it gave me whatever. It gave him, anyways, dealing with that gave myself a little priority in my mind, and so all the stuff that I was doing to manage myself was slipping away. I wasn't doing as well with it, going to the gym and all this other stuff. And I really feel that I can return to that and manage it on my own. Cause like we're saying, you got this far in life. Why do you need it now? So I'm hoping not to be on the meds for the rest of my life type thing, to get this sort of functioning normal or whatever I want to aspire to that I had before. Um, so like I said, go to the doctor, they put me on meds, dramatic turnaround instantly. And it's like, oh, good. Cause I was, this ADHD paralysis crap, I really believe in you got the power to do anything on your own. And it really hurt me that I couldn't open the door for myself. And, and you can always say, well, why don't you start going back to the gym again? It's like, well, it's because I dissolved to a point where the ADHD paralysis was to the point I couldn't jerk myself out of it, and like I said, I don't like the blame game stuff. So when I say this stuff, it's not to point fingers or it's just not much of a support system. My son is very supportive. He has his own life. I can't expect him to be a day-to-day type push for me to deal with this, or whatever. I don't, you know what I'm getting at. So just, I had a great support system through my divorce, and I don't have a support system for this, with the exception of my son. And girlfriend's starting to understand it better because she's starting to understand she has it too. So we're working on her a little bit. Not that my goal is to do anything about it with her. It's more for self-awareness for her. So maybe she will start diving into it and understanding why she is the way she is on some things. And maybe she'll, go on a little journey and understand it and understand why she struggles on the things she does. Because kind of easing her into it and trying to get her to open her eyes a little bit. But anyway, so back to the ADHD paralysis stuff. Yeah, it was really heartbreaking to get to the point that, man, I gotta go to the doctor. That was a huge leap for me because I haven't been to the doctor, and that was the other part. The other part, some of the ADHD stuff was piling in too. Afraid to go to the doctor. You know why? Because they're going to tell you got something wrong with you. You know why? Because you're not taking care of yourself. And what's that going to mean? It's going to be something terminal, and then you're going to be dead in 3 days or whatever. And it's like, oh my God, I had talked myself out of going to the doctor so many times. And like I said, not having me saying I don't have a support system. There's also people in my life that don't know how to approach me with it either. So I can't fault them. Sometimes you got to have people that are willing to stand up to you, and not everybody wants to go through that. And I'm usually pretty receptive to a lot of people, but you know what I'm getting at. It's just a dynamic that hadn't been explored in my life yet for this stuff. So anyways, we're using that word again. So yeah, so get to the doctor. Like I said, huge undertaking, get there, trying to not go to the doctor anyways. So I just told myself, I got to start going. I haven't been to the doctor in a long time for health checkup, any of that stuff. I gotta, it's either you live like you're going to die tomorrow or plan for you're going to live longer than tomorrow, and it was kind of a crossroads because I had some other health stuff that was bothering me in my gut, which I was scared to find out what it was about. And I thought it was something really bad. I mean, I thought it was, cancer of some type. But come to find out, pretty much what that was induced by stress, and then also drinking a lot of soda and other unhealthy stuff I did. So I was doing a lot of stuff that I was overdoing stuff that I thought helped me in the past, sugar and caffeine. Sugar caffeine is a horrible relationship. It could really get out of control. And that's where I was with that. And I was drinking a lot of soda for the caffeine and the sugar bump. And it wasn't making me functioning. It was destroying my gut. I started to have a lot of acidity problems, and it was starting to really irritate my gut. And I thought I was getting stomach cancer or something horrible, and that's what's making me scared to go to the doctor. Because at this age, you start hearing about your friends getting terminal illnesses. You've already started to lose friends from terminal illnesses. And it's a scary thing to get old. There's nothing graceful about it, unfortunately. So ended up making it to the doctor, meet this nice female doctor, and told her why I'm there. And she's like, okay. And I says, you know what? Also, I haven't been keeping up, as you can see on my records. I haven't done anything with a physical or any of that stuff. And I says, I want to get caught up on stuff. And she goes, good. So we did a blood test, and whatever the standard panel is of tests, 30 something, 30 or 70 panel. I forgot what it is. They do the standard blood draw and they look for like, I don't know, 35, 40 things or whatever. And I said, and then let's schedule a physical. And so when they put you on the meds, they want to do a 30-day follow-up, because this stuff is regulated. This isn't, this is a class 2. So they can't give these prescriptions out willy-nilly, and there's protocol they have to follow, and just to be responsible also. And so I'm like, let's do a physical when I come back in 30 days. So we used a baseline of my first visit. So we did a blood test from my first visit and did my weight and, all the basics, your vitals. Blood pressure was a little high. My weight was the highest it's ever been. I was at 265. The blood tests showed high cholesterol. Everything else was within where it was supposed to be. So that was like a breath of fresh air. So that made me feel better. It's like, okay, I may not be taking care of myself perfectly, but it's not the point of no return. All that stuff you can build up in your head with ADHD and doom and gloom crap. And it gets really hard to shake yourself out of it. And you get this ADHD paralysis stuff, which, yeah. So I'm using that as a motivation to, sink myself into it and see the results and see the turnaround and see what I can do. I've done a weight loss journey more than once in life and lost over 50 pounds a couple of times. And the way I did that was one of the first things I did was give up soda and high sugar foods, control portion size. And then I just started walking daily. And that's kind of what I'm doing this time. And what I like about this checking in 30 days after my initial visit is, so the meds has some appetite suppressant qualities to it. My appetite's way down, which is good. It helps me. And I gave up soda at the same time and and the meds helped with not having the cravings for that stuff. So it was this is probably the easiest time I've ever quit soda. And yeah, I've been off of soda for like 18, 19 days, something like that. But soda's pure crap. I've always known that, it was my source of caffeine more than anything. And that's been tough. I gave it up cold turkey, back on April 19th or whatever it was. And yeah, it's the without caffeine thing. I tried to give up soda recently before this. And what was the hardest part was no caffeine. And I try to give up caffeine, and I don't have any ill effects from caffeine or reasons to completely be off of it other than just trying to quit soda. So after like 7, 8 days or something like that, it's like, I can't be without caffeine. And I'm, you're going through those withdrawals from soda and sugar and getting that back in check. And I even did a 24-hour water fast to try and reset my appetite or my eating habits. And that, I believe that did help. But after being off the soda for 7, 8 days or whatever it was, and knowing that I was kind of over the hump on the withdrawal stuff, and then still feeling kind of scatterbrained and inability to do some things and not as focused, it's like, I got to find a replacement for caffeine so I don't go back on soda, because that'll get me back on soda more than the craving for the taste or the flavor or whatever. and I'm not a tea or a coffee. So trying to find a caffeine replacement was been a challenge for a long time. That led I've taken caffeine pills in the past, which are 100 milligrams, which isn't terrible per day, and I've been able to get by with one a day. And I mean, just as an example, my caffeine intake with soda was probably around 120 milligrams a day. So it's so it's even a little bit less caffeine than I was taking. I feel okay on it. It feels about right. I feel closer to normal than you know, after going through all these big changes, I guess. You know, the meds are different. You could feel it entering you. It doesn't feel slightly intrusive. Feel it overcoming, or you just feel it entering you, you know? And I think that might be because it can ramp up your blood pressure a little bit. And that may be what I'm actually feeling. I'm not sure. Um, but definitely appetite suppressant. And with that in mind, I've been having to learn what my body needs when it needs it, because the meds actually work good enough as an appetite suppressant. I really don't feel the need to eat at all. I shouldn't say that. I don't feel the cravings to eat. What I feel is something that I can remember in my life ever really noticing before, even with my other weight loss stuff. Um, I haven't noticed ever before when my body actually feels hungry, like it needs food. Like, I think I might be a little scatterbrained right now because my blood sugar is just too low. You know, when's the last time, and having to think about when's the last time I ate? There's a husband and wife I follow on YouTube. No, it was shorts on Facebook, Reels or whatever. And the husband isn't ADHD, but the wife is autistic and ADHD. And he talks about their journey together and stuff. And she's newly diagnosed. So she was diagnosed as an adult also. So, another person, high functioning through most of her life and not really sure what's going on here, but, maybe we should look into this, look into that. And then they find this out and it's like, okay, that explains this and that. So watching them and seeing stuff through their eyes is helpful. I'm going to lose my train of thought why I went to them. I don't want to stop edit stuff, so let's just transition. So yeah, so I go on this health journey, basically reclaim my health, trying to do it with a lot of significant changes. Now that I have this 30-day window where I'm going to the doctor once, getting my blood drawn, my heart rate and stuff like that, and my weight and all that. And now I'm, it's definitely, well, I know it was definitely an appetite suppressant. That's why I was talking about the husband and wife. So he has to remind her to eat. So I'm like, oh, and I bet because she's probably on similar meds or the same meds as me. Because he says he has to remind her, and he'll ask her, "Did you eat today?" And she's like, I don't know. And so, like I said, I'm starting to pay attention to my body feeling hunger, not feeling. So I would say before this, I kind of ate off of cravings. And when my work is seasonal right now, so I have a lot of downtime in the winter, I would eat a lot more in the winter. And which of course you don't need as many calories if you're not doing as much, So here I'm adding more calories to my diet. I always gain weight in the winter from lack of doing less, more cravings, sitting around, that kind of stuff. And then when I'm working in the summer, I start losing weight. My brain's busy with doing everything else. I'm getting the natural dopamine hits off of the stress of the job, priorities, accountability, keeps me going. I'm buzzing, I'm moving, I'm doing everything I need to do. And so now that I'm kind of, I'll say calorie deficient now, because I'm eating a lot less, definitely losing weight. I don't really want to weigh myself until the 30 day, because I want to see what 30 days of living this way really does to me. I don't like the day-to-day weigh-ins. It can work against you so many times. It gets frustrating, once a week, once a month. I know I'm losing weight because I'm just not eating as much. I'm still the same activity level, but I'm eating a lot less. So I know I'm not maintaining. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my stomach. But like I said, I'm having to pay attention to my body now because of the meds. A little lightheaded, you know, probably, feels like maybe low blood sugar, feels like when's the last time I ate, that kind of stuff. I can feel it in my gut. I can kind of feel the hunger. Um, and so trying to eat based on signals from my body versus cravings. I mean, I literally have, for the most part, I don't have cravings, very seldom. And I don't get the same reward from food as I did before either, which I'm perfectly fine with. I don't need food as therapy. I don't need that reward for eating mentally. It sets you up for bad eating habits. It's I got a bad relationship with food, and this is helping with that too. And I'm grateful for that because it's nice. Hopefully, I can reprogram myself, mentally with from the way I was eating. Because, like I said, I don't really want to be on these for the rest of my life if I don't have to. The meds. I'd like to get back to the normal I had before, where I was doing a lot of things to help me with the dopamine management and going to the gym and, you know, finding ways to inspire myself and working around the dynamics of ADHD. So in a way that works for me. So I believe I can get to that point again. It's just going to take a little time until I get kind of back on track with use the meds to kind of get me back to functioning at least the way I was before, where I'm productive and, get stuff done and not have this paralysis crap. Yeah, it's different. It's a big change. So like I said, I'm waiting until the 30-day to do the weigh-in. Really curious to see how much weight I can lose in 30 days just by changing my diet and my appetite and not having the same appetite. Um, Anyways, I don't want to get too far into that. I don't want to be overly optimistic and set myself up for disappointment because that's the other thing we don't deal well with, you know. So, yeah, it's a trip, man. Never thought I'd be dealing with this in this way because when I was diagnosed with it, it was mostly for curiosity's sake. Um, and it was kind of interesting, to come to find out, we did an IQ test and stuff like that and cognitive stuff and just all sorts of different tests, which was very enlightening and just for the curiosity of it. And now, this time later, it was good to have that test done because that validated it for getting meds. I didn't have to do all the testing and then see if I could get meds. I was already qualified for meds because I had the diagnosis. Didn't think I'd ever use it that way, but it got us a little further, a little quicker, you know. But like I said, I'm 18 days into basically starting the meds, changing my diet, quitting soda, quitting high sugar stuff. Um, yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't feel the same as when I felt my best before this. And that's been a while. Um, don't regret it either because I do feel it would have spiraled even more and it probably would have been more detrimental to my life, as far as holding it together, responsibilities, and not letting enough stuff fall to the side that you have other problems, that just contribute and makes things a lot worse. But yeah, it's a trip. It's Now that I understand more about ADHD, I definitely see it in other people in my life, and I've even talked to about some friends. Some kind of talk about it openly like they have it. Probably not. Doesn't sound like they were ever truly diagnosed because they didn't ever share experiences like, oh yeah, they put me on meds or like any type of sharing story like here's what I did. It was more like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I have it just because of this. But it's definitely a lot more common. Or I shouldn't say that. It's probably not as common as I want it to be. It's probably more common to me because you connect yourself with people you feel familiar with. And when you're around people that maybe function like you do, it feels familiar. You guys feel, you're in like company, just like common interests. It's like, oh, this guy's kind of wired like me. I understand him or her. So it might be just that I've surrounded myself with a lot of people that have it also. Just probably most of us are undiagnosed, you know. And my goal isn't to go out there and diagnose everybody or say, hey, now you got to go get checked out because this is your problem. No, I share some of it with them, and a lot of them don't seem too worried about figuring it out for themselves. And so that's not my place unless they ask anything more than that. I'm not out to inflict myself on other people, but if they want to ask me more, I'm happy to share with them and give them some encouragement if they think they want to deal with it or look more into it. So, yeah. Different kind of video for me. YouTube has been a journey too because I really wanted to try this, and that goes back to the business side. I wanted to find another line of work that was less physical, and I thought I can be a YouTube guy, master another career to the point that it's lucrative, and then just draw income off of it. And I still have that as a goal in mind. And sometimes they say with YouTube, don't force it. You got to make genuine content and all that. And so you can't force success either. You have to be genuine and be sincere and present yourself to the world and show your vulnerable side. And, hopefully somebody finds you, and hopefully enough people find you that it's, you get to talk to other people, otherwise it's a sign that maybe you shouldn't be there. But yeah, I had another YouTube channel, and I kept, even since day one with that channel, I told myself, this is the channel I'm going to learn on. And by that, I meant just learning the basics of YouTube, thumbnails, posting. And the reason I say start with that channel is because I used a topic that was my hobby, but it's not a huge hobby. And so that was the struggle to make it lucrative or get monetized or make money or whatever, because it's not a huge following for it. And I got to the point where here's the epiphany with it. I got to the point I had done over 80 videos in a year, and I had one person I developed a friendship with, and he got a subscription, and I was making like $1 a month off of him or something like that. And I still hadn't got $1 for any of my videos. And I looked at it and I'm like, YouTube, at this time, YouTube owes me like $16. Okay. I have been doing this for a year and made 80 some videos, and I got $16 from somebody I developed a friendship with, which I'm grateful for. I never asked him to become, to get to the point of giving money, and I'm grateful he did. Just shows you the sign is, type person he is. But I had a job to do for one of my other one of my businesses, and what I made off of that in a day, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what I really know how to do. I made $1,600 in one day, doing tree work. Tree work can pay really well, and it's high pressure, it's dangerous, it's risky. So it gives me that dopamine hit, and it forces me to pay attention because of the risk involved. It's got a lot of things in there that feed me to get me on track when I'm, naturally versus, meds. And I'm like, I made $1,600 in one day, and I spent over a year making 80 some videos. And I don't feel YouTube owes it to me. This is just to put it in perspective for myself, to kind of give you the reality check. Is your time better spent making videos, or do you have a skill that pays much better than that, and you can spend a day doing it? So and like I said, this isn't to brag either. This is just a reality check for me. Okay. You go out and do some tree work. Over $1,000 in a day with minimal out-of-pocket expenses, mostly labor. And you're sinking yourself into doing videos. Videos are arduous. They take a lot of time. They take a lot of effort. So, even that for me with my brain, I was back to the hyper-focusing stuff earlier in this video. I was determined, I was I was all in for over a year making videos with no reward financially, but just giving that as that's going to be the sign to me that things are starting to work and this is the right direction. I get monetized and I know ad revenue don't pay squat. So I wasn't thinking I was going to get rich off of ad revenue. And don't get me wrong, I understand YouTube enough. But it was like, dude, you can go make over $1,000 in one day and you are giving away your time to YouTube. YouTube is making money off of your videos and you're making $16 from a guy that you become friends with, but that's your only monetary reward from it. I mean, that's your only monetary reward from this after a year. And it's like, I can't do this anymore, at least not with this niche. And so that got me into where I'm at now with YouTube. And it's like, I got to try something with broader appeal. So my experience with YouTube so far is just understanding how to load, how to edit, audio quality, video quality, some knowledge of thumbnails and that kind of stuff. I'm not an expert at YouTube, but I figure now I have a better chance starting in an arena where there's a lot of competition than starting at zero in an arena where there's a lot of competition. Will it be successful? I don't know. It will be at some point because I won't let it not be. At some point I'll figure it out and I'll get paid by YouTube. It'll happen. I always make money eventually. I'll just probably get disappointed that it's not as lucrative as you think it is. What YouTube is for marketing. It's not to make money off of YouTube. Not that many people make a lot of money off of YouTube. The people that make the most money off of YouTube use it for marketing their other businesses, their interests, as advertising more than anything. So I just got to get to the point where this thing can turn some dollars just for satisfaction that I learned it, and not let it interfere with the rest of my money or my ways I make money, my other business. So yeah, so I need it. And that's what got me that's daisy chain to everything we just talked about, starting this journey. That's how I got motivated to start YouTube again. The meds helped enough where it's like, okay, I'm ready to do this. And now I got something to talk about. I got something to talk about that impacts a lot of people. And it's something that's a part of me. I'm motivated because I'm motivated right now to work on it. I'm motivated to talk about it. I'm learning a lot about it. That new stage, you become the expert. You learn a lot. And I am nowhere close to expert on ADHD yet. The more research I do, it's like, oh my gosh, it's encouraging. It's eye-opening. It's confirmation for who I am. And it's interesting. And I'm not bored with it, at least not yet. So it's been really intriguing as I learn more about it. And it's really interesting. So at least I'm dealing with a topic now that's with me every day. Not, like my hobbies. My hobbies go up and down, and my hobby I lost interest in because I saturated myself with a YouTube channel. And now I don't enjoy that hobby. So I'll probably go back to that hobby, but right now I just don't enjoy it. So now we're talking about something that's part of my everyday life and is part of a lot of other people's everyday life. So holy smokes, we're going on an hour. That's a long video. Even my hobby, my other channel, it was rarely we got videos this long. And I didn't want them to go this long because that type of content, you're usually getting to a point. You're usually discussing something that has, a beginning, a middle, and an end you try to resolve as quick as possible to retain people. And these type of videos are, kind of vlogging like, it's always a longer form content, but it also takes longer to find people, because there's a lot of people looking up this kind of stuff. And so this is one of those things you just kind of hope somebody clicks on you eventually and tells the algorithm that, okay, this type of person likes your video. Now we're going to push it to more people like this, that this person watches, to the types of people that watches the same as that person. And then we're going to try testing more people, and then as you get more followers, they test a larger sample as they figure out the type of people that are watching you. And it's a very slow process unless you do viral type content, but then viral content can collapse as fast as it explodes. It's hard to maintain. So in the long run, it's easier. better to have content that's interesting to other people. And I'm experimenting. Hopefully this is interesting to somebody. Let's see what happens, right? So anyways, like I said, we're about day 18, 19 into this ADHD stuff. Going back to the doctor April 17th, and yeah, I'll do an update. I'm hoping to see some significant changes because of the way my diet's changed. So I'm hoping I'll see a cholesterol change, a weight change. That's what I would like to see. Pretty sure on both of them, just because of how much my diet's changed. Should see a significance and change in both of them, I think. And by significant, as far as weight loss, oh, you know, when I was really trying to lose weight, I could drop, 5 pounds in a week, on a good week, 2.5, 3 pounds on a slow week. So, 30 days. Realistically, I think I'm going to lose 10 pounds on the scale. Yeah, I think, not for sure, but we might see 10 pounds. If it's less, we're not going to be disappointed as long as we lost weight. If it's more than 10 pounds, holy crap. Then we know it was all control of the fork, meaning if you would just eat what you need, you wouldn't have gained so much weight, because I'm not dying by not eating, or eating less. I'm going to say I'm not starving myself. I'm just eating a lot less. Portion control, and type of foods. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, if you made it this far in the video, God bless you. Thank you for stopping by. If you could subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you've subscribed already, if you continue to support us by the like, comment, or sharing, we'll do these videos periodically. I don't know how well they're going to do. There's a lot of people doing this stuff. If it starts getting some traction, that'll definitely motivate me to do more, because I do like talking about this stuff. I do like helping people. So hope you're well. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.